Today we will deal with some of the special infections that usually occur in the human body, and most of these special infections are usually granulomatous conditions. Okay? And in granulomatous conditions are nothing but they generally are more chronic in nature. And today we will deal about tuberculosis. As we all know, tuberculosis is one of the dreadful chronic disorder, and it is a granulomatous condition. Normally, tuberculosis is usually spread through droplet infection or through ingestion. Droplet infection is through inhalation of this, the products of any infected tuberculosis person. And when we inhale those tuberculous bacilli, then patient usually gets this tuberculosis. Normally, in this tuberculous droplet inhalation, it can either directly spread through the lungs because of inhalation, or sometimes what happens is at the tonsillar crypt area, it can actually affect the tonsillar crypt area, and then from there that it can get ingested into the lungs, get inhaled into the lungs, and this can also lead to tuberculosis. And second thing is through ingestion. Ingestion of especially bovine milk, which is when the cow is infected with the tuberculosis, then by drinking the milk that is produced by this tuberculous infected cow, also we can actually take this tuberculosis. And this what happens is because of this ingestion is nowadays it is rare because of the strict law enforcement of pasteurization, right? Because of this pasteurization, what happens is the actual tuberculous bacilli which is present with the within the infected milk is almost dead. However, if we actually happen to drink this unpasteurized infected bovine milk, the most common tuberculosis that it causes is tuberculosis of gastrointestinal tract, which is again one of the dreadful infections caused because of this tuberculous bacilli. We have one other thing, what is through direct spread, especially in some of the occupational workers such as pathologists who work, or butchers who actually directly encounter with this beef selling, like in the butchers also we actually see this one kind of tuberculosis which directly spreads the skin. Here we can actually talk about lupus vulgaris. Lupus vulgaris is a tuberculosis condition which is actually confined to the skin region. Okay, tuberculosis of skin is called as lupus vulgaris. So when we're talking about the pathology, how tuberculosis, the pathogenesis of this tuberculosis is occurring is, whenever a tuberculous bacilli is being ingested, usually the first lesion that forms is a miliary tubercle. In this miliary tubercle, what happens is, after this miliary tubercle occurs, this tubercle actually has histiocytes. Now the primary cell which is present there is histiocytes, and the histiocytes within this tubercle are highly they have this amoeboid they are highly excessive phagocytic activity is seen actually in this histiocytes which are present within the tubercle. Because of this phagocytic activity, what it does is, and it is also very much rich, or very much we have more number of bacilli within this tubercle. When this increased phagocytic action is present, it actually eats away the cells which are present near it, the cellular debris, and the histiocytic cell increases in size. It actually gets swollen up, and it acquires a shape called like epithelioid shape. Because of its shape like epithelioid, it is called as epithelioid cell. In this epithelioid cell, we have clear cytoplasm with a vesicular nucleus. In course of time, these epithelioid cells, what happens is, within this tubercle with the center and number of epithelioid cells at the surroundings, few of these tubercle epithelioid cells get coalesced. They fuse to form Jane cells. Okay, these Jane cells are pathognomic of tuberculosis. However, we can see them in some of the other infections like actinomycosis and suture granulomas, silk suture granulomas, etc. Even in those also, we can see this foreign body Jane cells, which are again a pathognomic feature of this tuberculosis. Now, a tubercle is something which is actually a non-vascular thing. Because of this non-vascularity, where there is no enough of blood supply, what happens is the central part undergoes necrosis. This is nothing but caseation, which is actually because of coagulation necrosis. With this coagulative necrosis material, tubercle can actually be described like a caseation necrosis material in the center, surrounded by epithelioid cells, which are further surrounded by your foreign body chain cells. Now, this structure is again surrounded by a group of lymphocytes and fibroblastic materials. So, this is actually how a tubercle appears, and this tubercle is pathognomic feature of a tuberculosis. In this, what happens is, after this tubercle, if properly treated by anti-tubercular drugs, then you will see a healed tubercle. What happens in this healed tubercle? All the caseation material, the caseative material underneath, it gets drained off, it gets healed, and it is replaced by fibrous tissue. So, this is nothing but a healed tubercle. But in some cases where there is no appropriate treatment or patient doesn't come to us for proper treatment and it has been prolonging, in those cases what happens? Central coagulative necrosis fastens or it increases in the size and spreads to surrounding structure, and in the center what happens? It becomes more amount of liquefactive material. This liquefactive material can turn into an abscess which is called as cold abscess or collar stud abscess if it is present in the neck region, which is again a pathognomic feature of tuberculosis. So what is the content of this cold abscess? Usually cold abscess is not true pus material, but it is fatty degenerative material that is present with some amount of bacilli. And this cold abscess, the draining material, the material from this cold abscess is very infective and it is very much rich in this bacilli material, that is the tubercle bacilli. Now this cold abscess, how to define it properly is how the actual structure looks like it. It has a central caseative material with tubercle bacilli within it, surrounded by a granulation tissue which is further surrounded by a granular lining. So this is about cold abscess. And one thing is, cold abscess is not true pus. Usually it contains fatty debris and serous fluid. Why it is called cold abscess? Because it does not have that actual symptoms of a pyogenic abscess. Normally a pyogenic abscess is an inflammatory in origin. It has all the symptoms of inflammation. In cold abscess, we doesn't see those symptoms of inflammation because it does not have collar, rubor, duber, etc. All these signs of inflammation are not present in cold abscess, and hence it is called it is so named as cold abscess. Okay. Now, when we're talking about the various clinical features of tuberculosis, we have tuberculosis has various manifestations, various systemic manifestations are present within this tuberculosis. First and foremost is whenever it affects pulmonary, the lungs first, if the lungs is the first lesion, then we see biliary tuberculosis where millet-sized foci will be seen, within the lungs, which are nothing but biliary tuberculosis. Patient usually will have night sweats, cough, productive cough can be seen, weight loss will be seen in these patients, initially dry cough which actually progresses to productive cough, and we see weakness, fever, and especially in case of pulmonary tuberculosis we see this productive cough. In primary pulmonary tuberculosis what happens? We see various structural abnormalities, and also in tuberculous pleuritis we see chest pain can be seen. There are some other conditions called as extrapulmonary tuberculosis. In extrapulmonary tuberculosis, the main sites are meningitis. Meninges will be involved, which can lead to tuberculous meningitis. Lymph nodes, tubercular lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are most commonly involved. How these lymph nodes usually manifest in tuberculosis is they are actually tender, they swollen or enlarged, and they actually have a characteristic feature of matting. Matted lymph nodes is a characteristic feature of tuberculosis. Whenever the tuberculosis is involving lymph nodes, the extrapulmonary side, what happens? Caseation occurs, caseating necrosis occurs within this, lymph nodes, and they start draining this tubercular material. Cold abscess can be seen in this lymph nodes again, and it can involve bone and joints, especially the spine, also called as pot spine or carious spine. Tuberculosis of spine it can be seen, and also in the joint sites. Joints are also most commonly involved in tuberculosis of bone, and we can see genitourinary tract tuberculosis. Skin, as we said, lupus vulgaris is one form of tuberculosis which affects the skin. So these are various clinical symptoms of tuberculosis at both pulmonary and extrapulmonary. When you're talking about pulmonary tuberculosis, we have various symptoms such as appetite loss, patient complains of fatigue, there will be chest pain, productive cough, coughing of blood, and this is nothing but hemoptysis. You can see productive cough and prolonged cough. Patient complains of night sweats, chills, etc. and pallor can be seen in these cases. When we're starting about diagnosis, In the diagnosis, careful history and the proper clinical examination will give us almost a provisional diagnosis. It gives us an insight into the disease. And also, chest radiograph, especially for pulmonary tuberculosis, is of diagnostic value. We actually can see millet seed appearance. Here in the radiograph also we can see many radio opaque foci can be seen over the lung structure, which is nothing but millet seed appearance on chest x-ray. Now, when you're talking about post-primary tuberculosis, it is again a gradual onset and it is of two types, exogenous and endogenous type. Normally, patient usually have all constitutional symptoms like fever, malaise, cough, and patient will have weakness, etc. And they'll also have chronic cough, which is nothing but hematemesis, hemoptysis. Hemoptysis is nothing but coughing of blood, and unresolved pneumonia can be seen in these cases, and also exudative pleural effusion. Patient also will complain of spontaneous pneumothorax. Patient will manifest with spontaneous pneumothorax in these cases. Now, when we're talking about bone and joint disease, spine is commonly involved, also called as Pott's disease, because Pott was the first person who actually discovered this tuberculosis of spine, and it is also called as Cary's spine. In this condition, what happens is we have different types of tuberculosis of spine. It can occur. It is like central tuberculosis of bone, where the central part, the medullary part of the spine bone is involved. We can see the epiphyseal plate where the epiphysis is usually involved there, and we also at the joint region also we can see tuberculosis of bone. Normally, there is a particular phenomena called Ponson's arthropathy, usually seen in case of this tuberculosis of bone. Whenever there is tuberculosis of spine, usually when we are treating it, or when it is treated, or when it is healing itself, it actually heals with fibrosis of the or ankylosis of the spine joints. So with this ankylosis, what happened? We actually have patient usually complains of a stiff spine in cases with tuberculosis. Now coming to diagnosis, we have various diagnoses. The history is again very important. Clinical examination, chest X-ray as we thought, and we also have a most gold standard diagnostic technique is direct microscopy of the sputum. When we actually directly examine the sputum, we can actually culture the bacilli from that, tubercle bacilli from that, and we have special stains for it like Gill-Nielsen stain and rhodamine-Oramine stain. When we see this picture, it is Gill-Nielsen staining of Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and this picture shows a fluorescent Oramine stain with acridine. You can see tuberculosis in sputum here. We also have other tests like tuberculin skin test, where we use purified protein derivative. In this also we have two different types of tests. One is Heath test and one is Montauk's test. And we also have other tests such as quantiferin test, and we also have PCR, that is polymerase chain reaction. PCR is known to be a highly diagnostic value in determining or in diagnosing tuberculosis. And in tuberculosis, what happens? This Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacilli usually requires about 4 to 6 weeks of time to grow in a medium. In mediums that are most commonly used are Lowenstein-Jensen or Middlebrook medium. We also have radioactive Bactex system and non-radiometric Mycobacterium growth indicator tube. These are various media in which Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria can be grown. And other tests includes nucleic acid amplification test, and also for pleural fluid we also can check for adenosine deaminase, which is again of diagnostic value. Now coming to the management. In the management, we actually have a standard treatment of anti-tubercular drug treatment, and in meningeal TB or spinal TB, it is actually involves a long-term treatment, whereas in a normal tubercular treatment, what we can do is dot therapy can be given, that is directly absorbed therapy. In this, we actually have a combination of drugs like rifampicin, isoniazid, and when we are giving this standard treatment, what happens is we give it for 6 months period of time. But when we are treating for meningeal tuberculosis, in meningeal tuberculosis or spinal tuberculosis, it usually takes a long-term therapy, and this involves about 12 months of therapy. Here what we do is we actually replace ethambutol with streptomycin. So these are how this picture actually shows us how each particular drug acts on which particular system. Now, when we're talking about giving drugs to pregnant women or malnourished women, here what we do is we actually add pyridoxine to it, because Isoniazid is a drug which actually can cause peripheral neuropathy. So to counteract that, in a combination of drugs, we also give pyridoxine. And for example, when patient is using or rifampicin, normally patient will have orangish tears, urine, etc. So we have to tell the patient that this is a phenomena or an adverse drug effect of the drug that we are giving, and not to stop the drug because they see these kind of changes. And coming to effectiveness of therapy, normally for the therapy to be effective, the sputum smear after 2 months of a therapy and after 5 months of a therapy should be negative. Only then we can tell that the particular anti-tubercular therapy that we have given to the patient is effective. Next, we also have something called as drug-resistant tuberculosis. This is because tuberculosis treatment is usually long term. As we said, it is 6 months period of time. What happens is patients usually lose the compliance, for the therapy, and they actually skip the therapy in between. In those conditions, what happens is tubercle bacilli attains resistance to the normal regularly giving drugs. So to counteract this, what we do is multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, it is actually erupting. In this, what happens is resistant to at least rifampicin or isoniazid is usually found. So we have to do something to counteract this. So MDR in addition to quinolone and at least one second line drug is being added to prevent this drug resistant tuberculosis, or to treat this drug resistant tuberculosis. Now, as I have discussed, there is something called directly observed therapy. In this directly observed therapy, to increase the compliance of the patient, what we do is we ask the patient to come directly to the physician and take the drug in front of the physician. So it has been directly absorbed by the physician whether the patient has been taking the medication or not. So with this, what happens is it improves the adherence of the patient to the drug, and also it will prevent multi-drug resistant. Again, drug resistant tuberculosis also will be prevented by this step. In this DOT therapy, what we do is we give the medication 3 times for 1 week. Okay, patient is asked to come towards it thrice in a week, and then the drugs have been delivered directly to the patient in front of the physician. Recently we have various vaccines also to prevent tuberculosis. It is being given from longer time. BCG vaccine is one among them, that is the Calmette-Guerin bacillus, which is a live attenuated vaccine form of Mycobacterium bovis. This will help in preventing tuberculosis. So this is about tuberculosis, its pathogenesis, the clinical symptoms, and also various procedures that we actually do. When we are talking about surgical procedures that we do, usually the tuberculosis is best treated with medication, anti-tubercular medication. However, if you see some cold abscesses which are not been draining, or which have not been treated with the anti-tubercular drugs, what we do is we actually give a incision and drainage for them. So in this incision and drainage, what happens is whenever there is pus, drain it. That is the basic principle, right? So when we are, you actually give an incision at this cold abscess region and let it go off, let the pus drain off, and then local therapy with anti-tubercular drugs will help in faster healing. And in case of pot spine or Carey spine, excavation of the necrotic bone material will be helpful with further anti-tubercular drugs for faster healing. So these are the surgical methods that can be done in treatment of tuberculosis, especially the cold abscess and also the bone tuberculosis, which usually actually starts as osteomyelitis. So in osteomyelitis, like various treatments like saucerization and corticotomy, these will help in removing of the necrotic bone material from there, and thus will allow anti-tubercular drugs to act more appropriately or more faster, and it will also help in healing in a better way. So this is about tuberculosis. Hope you understood the topic, and for better revision you can actually check for various surgical textbooks also, which will give you a better insight into various surgical procedures also. Thank you.